but we have to strike back, right? Budweiser came out with that shit, Bud Light, boom, that company took a spanking.
Yes,
Target,
it did.
spanking.
Yep.
That's the American people saying, fuck you, we're not down with what. How do we continue to do that? Not pay taxes?
No, that's a good question. I mean, the fact that Biden's still up in the polls, right? That scares the shit out of me.
Dude, the polls, that shit I know is a complete farce.
Well, but to your point, right? Like, I think it's getting guys like you and me out and talking. And
But it puts us out there to get fucked with. That's what sucks.
I'm totally okay with getting fucked with. I think at the end of the day, if you're going to villainize me for being a patriot, bring it on. Right,
yeah, like I'm domestic terrorist. You went to your
I don't care.
Like town meeting. You went to the board meeting. You're a bad guy.
Dude, we all have the best time ever to start a small business.
If I'm not going to be 100% in, I'm not going to do it.
Come on, man, just be yourself.
Yeah,
and just show up as yourself.
If you don't realize what I'm really about, I'm about freedom, family, and my country.
Bernie, Mr. Sousa, cheers.
Cheers, my friend.
Cheers to Black Rifle Coffee over there.
Yeah, man.
You know, this show started with me wanting to give back to a younger Ryan, meaning thinking about myself back in the day, which you saw me early on in my career. We'll get into some of that.
Yep.
And I never needed to make $100 million to turn around and help the next guy. I saw guys in my firm making pretty good money and saying, hey, why isn't that guy giving me more help, right? You know, you're sitting there driving these beautiful cars and you got a nice house, like, where's my help? So the show is predicated on turning around and helping the next guy or girl online. Your story is similar, but different in a lot of ways. Born and raised, Rahway, lived in Elizabeth, then came down here to Brick, and then eventually landed in Point Pleasant. And you've grinded your way to success. You've had some falls along the way where you've built yourself back up. You have a beautiful family. You have, got to the pinnacle, or what I would call the peak of medical device sales and running teams and then launching your own product. So I'm excited to dive into your story. I know you have a ton of nuggets. We'll touch on some politics as well.
Oh, boy.
I know that you like that just as much as me. You'll probably be a little smoother with it. But I'm excited to jump in. So welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Always good to see you.
So how long we know each other now?
Man, it's got to be going on, I would say, 12 years.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, 12,
maybe
13
even
years.
a little longer from when I first met you. But
I think I've been doing the business 14 years total, 15 years, right around there.
Yep.
I did it a little bit before I met Guy with Dave Rabe. So I've been in the business a total of like 15 and a half, 16 years. But I was with Guy originally 14, and you guys were good friends.
Yep.
And we were introduced, started to play golf at your clubs, and I saw the things that you were doing. Went down to your Manayunk place.
Oh God!
I said, "Oh, this guy's he's got a good life, and he's making money, and he's in and out of Philly."
Man.
And
forgot about Manayunk. Bring back memories, Ryan.
He's traveling, but that was something that I could look up to. Right? This is a regular dude, doing really well. Accepted me.
Yeah.
And that was cool, and it was something that was memorable to me. But you have really built yourself a great career. And I want to dive into some of the ways that you had to weave and bob to get to where you are today, as well as touch on some personal stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So, finished high school. Did you go private or did you finish in Point?
No, so it was a Catholic school. Actually went to Catholic grade school, went to Catholic high school for a little while, and then decided I wanted to go to public school. Didn't like it, but my parents were having a hard time paying the bills at the time, and decided that I wanted to stay in private. So I worked in my private school through the summers, painting walls, and
Monsignor Donovan?
Monsignor Donovan in Toms River, St. Donovan Catholic, I think it's called now.
Yeah.
But, went and put in the work to maintain my education, because I went to public school for, I think, 1 year, because I had a bunch of friends there through sports and just thought the education would be similar, not really having done anything other than private school my whole life, and wanted to help my family out. And then when I went there, I realized that it just wasn't what was challenging me at the time, and I didn't want to be there. So asked my parents what I could do to help get me back in private school. So I started working at the school during the summers to paint walls and wash floors and, do contracting projects throughout
Why
the school.
back then did you already have that thought process of like, was it simply at the time, I have more friends here because I got established here? Or was it, I know that this is a better route for me?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Like, I think when I went to public school, I felt that way because I had played sports with all the guys that I was in public school with throughout my life, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever it was. So I always had pressed my parents to say, hey, I want to go to public school. I want to go to public school. And they wanted to keep me in private. But when we hit financial troubles as a family, I agreed to go to public and they let me. And then when I was there, I realized it just wasn't a good fit for what I needed at the time.
Yeah.
And I was never a good student in high school. I was a very immature kid. I was a grade ahead technically for my age. So it wasn't something that I really understood at the time, but I didn't know how to study. I didn't know how to really develop myself academically. And my parents were so tied up with my siblings and, much younger than me. And I just didn't really have that kind of network where I could have understood how to thrive and be better. But I recognized that when I went to public school, it was such a drastic difference from private that I wanted to get back to private to give myself the best chance.
I think that's pretty impressive to be able to recognize that.
Wow.
I think most people in high school would just kind of be like, all right, go with the flow. I hate school. I suck at school.
Right.
You said, no, I have a better chance over there to go accomplish some of the things. What did you want to accomplish at that time? You're 16, 17 years old.
Yeah, I was so into sports at that time. I wasn't into anything else. I think I just wanted to kind of find myself, right? Like I wanted to just be around people that I felt shared similar values and just had a better idea of where I was trying to go. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't really say that I would really had a path at that point. It was more just, hey, I know I feel more comfortable here, and recognizing at that time for me that I was still very immature for my age and still trying to grow up and figure out who I wasn't going to do well in a public school. So, sports, I wrestled, I played football, I played basketball, all these baseball, everything else, it didn't matter. I just knew I needed to be in an environment that was going to help me at least try and bridge that gap until I could figure out who I was.
So after high school, you went to West Virginia?
No, so actually I again, just for, our family and just I had, my siblings were so much younger than me, right? So you have me, I'm going through high school. My youngest sibling at that time, I think, was 3 or 4, then my brother was 2. So we had this massive age gap between, I think it was 11 years and then 13 years. So my parents were just in the thick of it trying to deal with my siblings. So for me, I just wanted to try and figure out what was going to be the best way for me to get myself where I wanted to go, but not put too much of a financial strain on my family. So I actually graduated high school and went to Ocean County College for a year, played golf on the golf team there. It was fun, cool experience. And then something different. And, got some decent grades, and I think that's where I started to mature a bit and figure out hey, I know how to study. I've got to figure out this on my own. Really started to kind of dial in my academics a little bit and start to look toward the next step. So I still didn't have enough money after that, even a year and a half in JC. So I was actually working at Circuit City, and that's kind of where I found my niche for sales, was at Circuit City, where you're kind of compensated for selling service plans and different kinds of TVs and all this kind of stuff. And
I also worked at Circuit City in Brick.
Wow, man, see this? See, you find new connections every day.
I sold cameras. I crushed it.
But you know what I'm talking about then, right?
Yeah, they still work commission.
JVC would pay you $25 where, ProScan would pay you $10.
What were you in? Were you in cameras?
I was in the AV. I was in the TV department. TV, but that was kind of where I first figured out I was really good at sales and knew how to talk to people and get them to kind of think the way I wanted them to think. And you get incentivized for selling a service plan, and you had a commission thing where it would pop up on the screen every day, and I had 2 other guys in my department, and that competitiveness also kind of kicked in, right? Because you're looking, you're oh, would you sell today? Would you sell today?
Yeah.
And then you're All right.
It's a fun environment. I think
Fun
a lot of
environment.
people think that like someone who is incentivized by money, especially in a sales-driven job, it's always like that person's going to be bad.
Yep.
No, when you haven't been raised with money and you want greater things for your family in the future, like you want to make money.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean you lose your integrity to make money, but you're in a sales job and you're incentivized by doing certain numbers, like it's exciting. And to learn that as a younger guy, I worked at Lowe's.
Yep.
It was like tops and flooring sales when I was there. You know, and again, I did not, at the time, I didn't even know that I was good at sales because
Right.
in my head, I'm never going to be that successful because I got kicked out of high school.
Right.
Truthfully, that was my mindset at the time.
Right.
Until one day, Dave Rape, who told me, rest in peace, he told me, you'd be really good at sales. A week later, I go back to Lowe's, and some well put together guy came in, you know, country club style guy, beautiful wife, nice ring, earrings on, and I tell him he could get the flooring somewhere else.
Yep.
My buddy, Chris Carbone, his father owned a tile company, and they tiled a lot of Lakewood that was being built up at the time. And I just knew that he can get it over at Dow Tile for a better price, and he can install it better. The installers that work for Lowe's most of the time suck.
Right.
Now, allegedly. Nowadays, I don't know, you know, if they're good or bad. This is 16, 17, 18 years ago, maybe
Right.
even longer. And so the guy left. He came back another week later. He's like, here's my card. He goes, you're very good at selling. And I said, I didn't sell you anything. I just told you the truth.
Right.
He's like, well, that's what I mean. You're genuine.
Right.
And I remember he took my card, and I looked. He was like senior vice president of something. I forget what company it was. And in that moment, I said, fuck, I'm actually really good at sales. What am I excited about? And Dave Raid had been bothering me to come do phone calls for finance. So I didn't mean to hijack your story, but those little jobs, you know, selling inside retail teaches you a shit ton.
100%. Yeah, and I mean, I think the motivation too, right? Like, I knew when I was growing up that I wanted to help my family, and that was a big motivation. I saw how hard my mom and my dad worked. You know, my dad worked 2 jobs. I barely saw him. He would literally sleep 4 hours a day. You know, he'd go and he was working in a warehouse through the union in New Jersey. We'd have dinner together as a family at 5 o'clock. He'd be out at 6, come home 6 a.m. So he was working a graveyard shift, get up, 9 a.m., go, and he'd do his contracting company, right? And I saw that from when I was, 9, 10 years old, and just appreciated the work that he was putting in to give me the life that I had an opportunity to have. And that's why I wanted to chip in and go and work at the high school, because I didn't feel like my family should bear that burden. My mom was the same way. I remember her when I was 8, 9 years old, waitressing, and then she became a paralegal, and they just busted their ass.
The work ethic was
it was
built
huge.
in you.
It was built into me, and I remember feeling guilty, when I started to make a little money, and my dad would come by and the landscapers would be at our house, and I'd be like, I could run outside. I'm like, I'm gonna go clip a tree, because I didn't want my dad to, see that, because I grew up cutting the lawn every week, and I had my chores, and just traditional.
Yeah, once you have a little
values.
bit of money, you kind of almost feel guilty of
100%.
how your parents lived.
So, yeah, but I think my parents also would.
We're happy that you can.
They're happy, but at the same time, they know I'm the first one to tell them I am where I am, because I got the work ethic from my family, and I saw how hard they were working, what
Point
they were
Pleasant's
sacrificing.
a great town to be able to live in, and
yeah,
all of those things.
and give back to my brother and sister. And having that age gap at the end was actually an advantage, because it motivated me to get to wherever I could go, to make sure that if they needed something, it could call me and not bother my parents. Mm-hmm. So I remember, my sister being at ASU, and hey, bro, can you, just like a couple hundred? I'm like, I got you. Don't worry about it. Be able to go, and I'm working at the hospital at that time, and I'd be at Jefferson, and there was a Bank of America, and I'd wire her the money right away, and that felt great. Like, I didn't even care about it, because
it felt good that you were able to do it.
Because I was able to do it for my little sister, and she didn't have to ask my parents, who were still trying to establish themselves, many years later.
Yeah, that's like instilled in you.
Yep.
So you went off to West Virginia.
Yep.
You have a blast.
Have a blast. Learned a lot.
Did you love your college experience? Did you learn a lot?
You do. I think, the sentiment where people say you grow up at college, it's the truth, right? You find yourself a little bit, you find out who you are as a man or a woman, and you kind of gravitate toward that. And I think for me at West Virginia, it was the first time where I was kind of out of my bubble here locally from all my protected friends and people I've known for all these years. And I was able to just kind of go out and find who I was, find some things I liked that maybe, were pretty continual from what I liked when I was here, but different things I liked that maybe people here didn't like.
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of craft my own identity and went out there and I just had a blast, had a lot of fun first year, but then got back to work second year and I started to work at the bars, the nightclubs, actually like at the end of my freshman year, started to help pay my way. Parents were helping out as much as they could, but they helped me pay through college, but I still helped pay my own way through college. So I worked from freshman year to senior year till the day I graduated. And, that taught me a lot too about like balancing and how you manage your time. And I think all those lessons that I learned in college while I was having a blast, helped me to where I am today.
100%. You have that learning experiences. A lot of people that came out of college, and I didn't go to college. I've been working since I was 17. That on-the-job training I got while they were just partying for 4 years, a lot of them, they didn't work at all. Sure. They had the luxury, or they were blessed to have their parents be able to pay for it, and they were in the same situation as you. I saw how much further ahead I was when they got to that point their senior year.
Yep.
Right? And I used to hate on myself a little bit, like, damn, I went to college. I didn't go to college. I'm going to need an idiot. College, I'm sure, could have helped me, but it isn't always the route that everybody needs to take, and that's something I always like to put an emphasis on. Yep. Not to make myself feel better, but someone else out there who maybe just hated high school and didn't graduate, like, there's a zillion ways to make a lot of money not going to college.
That's a great point. So funny enough, and I don't know if I've even told you this yet, but the majority of my teams I hire now, college degree is not required. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't been the case in medical device for a long time, right? Yep. Like you had to have a college degree.
A 4-year degree in something.
Right. But I think we're waking up to a realization that,
all the software companies, Microsoft, Facebook, all the techs have dropped it.
Well, it should be, in my opinion, right? I think even myself, the teams that I hire on character and work ethic and what I think you're going to bring to the table. It doesn't matter if you have that degree, because at the end of the day, I think we're all probably doing something different than we intended to do with our degree. I went in and, I was going to be a PR journalism marketing major and, I'm selling medical device a year out of college.
Yeah.
Nobody plans on that, right? So I think what we're doing today as a society and trying to put an emphasis away from college degrees is advantageous to where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do as a society, because at the end of the day, I think thought thinkers and people that are going to actually move the needle for us as a society are going to be people that have the real life experience earlier, and they build who they are and they figure things out, and they're, kind of bred from blood and fire, and you figure out like, hey, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to still succeed despite the challenges.
They're not joining the jihad. After college,
after
Harvard?
I sure as hell hope not. I'm not hiring any of those people. I can promise you that.
Yeah,
you go to Columbia,
the Harvard, the Berkeley.
Columbia is a bag. You're probably blacklisted. You're not going to fit in my mold. But, I think, again, right, like I think everybody could craft their own path, and I think you and I are a testament to that, right? Like, I grew up different areas, but very similar backgrounds, and I think we both challenge ourselves to be who we are today by putting in that work to be where we are.
And we're going to walk through your path, and it shows you, like, you go find success in this, it creates this opportunity. You then learn, fail, succeed in that opportunity, it creates this opportunity.
100%.
And you got to go narrow focus on one like you did. You came out and originally got training in Xerox, right?
Rico. So like the Eagles, Rico copiers, but same deal, right? Like they teach you to go figure out if you could sell this, you could sell that, right? Mm-hmm. And it's again, I mean, anybody could go out and try and learn to be in that industry if you have a good personality and you're likable. Whether you're selling copiers and then you eventually transition in medical sales, doesn't matter. And I think the stigma that we have as a society is abhorrent, right? Like,
Yeah.
there shouldn't be this stigma where you have to go to college, you have to do this. What you have to do is talk to people like Ryan Robbins and Bernie Sousa, and then you get to learn from people like us and say, no, we're going to put you on this path and you're going to succeed because you're going to believe in yourself and you're going to be who you're going to be, regardless of what anybody else thinks. You believe in yourself, that's the most powerful pathway you could
You
create.
just need one person to believe in you.
One person. And you know what? That one person could be you. And if you believe in yourself and you think you're going to get there, I promise you're going to get there. You're going to have people that help you along the way. Everybody does.
So I'm going to challenge you and put you on the spot. When you first met me, did you
100%.
think I was going to get to where I am now?
Yeah, I did. Because I knew kind of what was behind who you were at that time.
Yeah.
But I would say the same thing about me. If you put my age up against your age at that time, we'd look at each other and be like, oh, crap, right? Like, all right, these guys have potential, but do we know where they're going to go?
Yeah, where do they land?
But
Which is, I think, when you're that person that could fall to not being successful or be successful, it's extremely important to be around the right people. Mentors, coaches, great sales leaders, or a business owner that sucks you in and wants to maybe succeed you to business 20 years from now. Just having that guiding hand to kind of say, no, pal, you go this way, don't go that way. That's problematic over there. I've been there, done that. Stay on the course. And you had a lot of those people as well. So I want to get into the medical device sales more. So you started out with Stryker right out the gates?
So actually, I had an offer with Stryker to go into Baltimore when I was selling copiers in Pittsburgh. And I turned it down because I wanted to be closer to my family. So all of my family was still here in Point Pleasant. I had been away for 4 years and want to kind of work my way back. So that was a big deal, right? You get a job offer like Stryker, you don't really turn it down too often. But again, goes back to values and what you want in your life. And I wanted to be closer to my family, so I turned it down. Then they found a position for me to slide into in Philadelphia. So I went out, interviewed in Philadelphia, met a guy that turned out to be my mentor for 10 years.
What was
Great
his
guy,
name?
Todd Johnson.
Still in touch with Todd?
Still in touch with him. Still families.
Isn't it crazy when you have someone like Todd who, at the time, you were probably looking up on putting him on a pedestal.
Yep.
And then you catch him and you're equals or even surpass those people. I don't know what Todd's doing nowadays, but like it's just so surreal 10, 15, 20 years later from those people. And the good ones that weren't trying to use you are so damn happy for you.
100%.
They are the most happy people to see you succeed.
Yep, and Todd was definitely that guy for me. I mean, we lost contact a little bit, I think, when we kind of hit that plateau, right, where we started butt heads because I felt like I was trying to push back on him a little bit as a leader, and that happens. But, just talked to him a couple months ago and just keeping in contact. And I think you said it best, Ryan. I mean, the people that truly are proud of you when they develop you are the people that don't bear that animosity or jealousy.
Yeah.
He's never been that. And he's always just kind of been that guy.
That's a true
Mentor.
true mentor and true
100%.
leader and a good friend.
And
there's a
good
lot of
friend.
friends that hate on your success because they're not doing things the way that you would, and they'll find other holes in you to try to point out.
Yep.
But those people usually have a problem or insecurity with themselves. And I know I've experienced that in my life. I'm sure you have as well.
Absolutely.
So did you start out right in cranial facial?
So craniomaxillofacial, that was the division. And
Talk about what that is a little bit for anybody who doesn't know.
So I mean, craniomaxillofacial is essentially neurosurgery and any kind of trauma from neck up. So gunshot wounds, you're reconstructing the maxilla and mandible. Neurosurgery, you have to remove the cranial flap, skull flap, and you're actually in the brain, and you're working to remove tumors and things like that.
And now you're putting a plate that acts like a fake skull.
Well, it depends. So if you're removing a tumor and the tumor hasn't actually integrated into the skull, then you're okay putting the patient's actual skull back on. You use plates and screws. Use some biologics, depending if they have a gap, meaning like if there's a part of the tumor that ate through the bone, you would actually fill it with like a cement, and then you kind of put that back on.
So you hit it with some Bondo?
Yeah, Bondo, little
quick
glycol.
cement, little quick crete?
That's it, we're good. But, you get into like all these things. And again, it goes back to what you said, right? I'm a kid from Rahway who was a jock for all these years and wasn't really that tuned with school until I got into college. And then all of a sudden I'm in neurosurgery, right?
Yeah. And for those people that don't know,
Yep.
you're doing the surgery, and not that your doctors didn't know how to do it, but it was your equipment.
Our equipment, the doctors are performing the surgery. You're standing right next to them in the operating room, and you're essentially just, when a technical question comes up, like, hey, can I put this screw into this side of the mandible? Can I use this plate here? Can I use this biologics here? You're answering that question, which directly affects the outcome. And I think that weight was heavily on me, very early on, and it was something I loved. It was something I worked hard to be great at, and it was very humbling at the same time because, my grandmother, my dad's mom, died at 48 when I was 16 from a brain aneurysm, and I think that was a big reason that I got into that space, because that's what we did. So when you have an aneurysm, they clip the aneurysm, and they have to remove your skull flap, and
relieve the pressure.
Yeah, I think all that kind of stuff that hurts you one way or the other leads you to a path that you want to improve other people's outcomes. And I think that's a big reason why I wound up with Stryker in that space.
Life happens for you, not to you.
100%.
It's like, how do you flip it? And, when you go through really tough shit,
Yep.
like you really do become stronger. Your brain becomes calloused on the stress of it. And
Yep.
that's business too, right? You go through tough shit.
Yep.
Tell me about some of the craziest things that you've seen without, obviously, we're not going to disclose any patient's name,
Yeah.
but.
No, I mean, we've had, there's a bunch of professional athletes I've been in a room on, a few 76ers that will remain nameless. But I think if you look at facial trauma, you can figure them out, right? Mm-hmm. Definitely have seen a lot of crazy stuff from like gunshot perspectives living in Philly.
What was the craziest gunshot scenario?
Man, you have a lot of people
like
that
a slug,
Yeah, you have a lot of people that got into some really violent altercations in Philly where their whole face is essentially blown off. So you're picking up the bones and you're trying to reconstruct that. And a lot of the technology that's kind of come about with virtual surgical planning and things like that have allowed us to do that, where you could create essentially like a bridge and this gap, and you're creating a 3D model of the mandible, and then you're just plating it. But the microvascular part was always challenging. It was difficult, but worked with fantastic surgeons that made that stuff happen.
It's wild and very intense, and like, I don't think I could do that job. I mean, I'm such a chicken shit when it comes to the hospital. Like, I'll like go to war. I'll fight whoever I have to fight to protect my family or friends. Whether I think I could beat them or not, I'm stepping up. Like, the hospital, I'm just like the biggest fucking baby, dude.
Well, my wife always jokes about that, right? Like, we all have guns. Somebody comes in my house, I'm shooting you.
Yeah.
That's it. End of story. I'll deal with the cops later. Come in my house, threaten my family. 2 in the leg, maybe 2 in the chest.
Yeah.
Depends how aggressive, right? But you go in the OR and you're just there and you see stuff, and then there's been situations where somebody would nick an artery and blood squirts across the room, and you're like, oh, God. Yeah, and you just kind of, you get taken back for a minute, but you don't even think about it because you're there to do your job, right? So you think about our troops and
you're in the adrenaline rush.
Yeah, the adrenaline rush, but it kind of puts you back to like all this stuff that you're seeing, and you think of what the troops see and like how much we have to appreciate that fact, right?
Yeah.
And look, at the end of the day, you're there to provide a service for the patient and the clinician. But
I was watching a story from Marcos Luttrell today, and you just see just the trauma on that guy's face and just like the stress that aged him. And he gets up and he's taking care of, his family still and doing what he does down there in Texas. And he remembers those guys, all the time. And he's always pointing out their foundations and, everything that I do. And maybe because I lived in a town that did a lot of parades, and the military guys would come through, and I remember you used to have the military exercises where you'd be able to go sit in the equipment, which I don't think we do enough of in this country anymore, which is on purpose. We'll get into that later.
Yep.
But I want to go back to shot in the face.
Yeah.
The guy who does our production, his cousin, was walking back from the gym in Brooklyn, and some crazy man was on a scooter, pulled up, boom, boom, shot him in the face, dude.
Holy crap.
Went right through his jaw, out the other side of his jaw, snapped it. No, so that would be a case you would
That
take
would have
on.
been, that would have been a case.
It's
I
on
was in.
video too, dude. It was on the news. Crazy.
I mean, it's
We'll get into the politics side later.
Fair enough.
I won't throw us off course. So, tell us about your trajectory. So you went in there.
Yep.
Now, for playing a little bit of steelman, to use Joe Rogan's word,
Yep.
people could say, "Oh, well, you're placed into these hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
You're placed into a good, a good position that already has the great docs there." What would you say to that person who is, dealing with that in their sales organization right now, no matter what the industry?
Gosh, yeah, no, I mean that is not accurate in medical device. I mean, anybody that knows medical device, it's eat what you kill, and it's not very friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Stryker's infamous where if you don't hit quota for a year, you're put on plan, and if you don't hit quota year 2, you're fired. It's just
It is what it is.
Yeah. So, medical could be medical from a service component, but at the end of the day, you're still developing your business. You're developing your grid. You're building your leads. You're, trying to get people to buy into the product that you're selling, what you're trying to do. So, I mean, it was very, it was intimidating. I mean, you go in and you're in this organization, you don't really realize what it is until you're into it. And I think there was a part of, me being naive going in medical sales, I didn't really understand. But when I got into it and I started to really understand it, I was so grateful to be there. And I had so many people, and I'm sure, with your audience, I guarantee you're going to have 1 million people that are going to maybe watch this and say, how the hell do you get into medical sales? Yeah. I get messages constantly on LinkedIn from people in medical sales college. And
I have a guy shutting down his business that I think he's, would be great at. He asked me if I knew anybody. I said, I'll introduce him to you.
Yeah, I think he actually messaged me.
Yeah, Jeff. It was nice too.
We went
He's
back
out
and
by
forth.
you.
Yeah, we went back and forth. But I mean, I can't even tell you, I get 15, 20 messages a day on LinkedIn from people that are, just trying to slam down the door to get into medical sales. But it's not what everybody thinks it is. I mean, it's a fraternity and a sorority once you're in, and you could go between different companies. But it's a meat grinder at the same time. Like you go in and you got
to earn your keep and
you
earn
have to
your
earn your
relationships.
keep. You are under a microscope at all times. It is excruciating work. You're up at 5 a.m. You're in the OR by 6. You're setting up your trays. You're making sure the patient is ready. There's so much that goes into it, So, I mean, to answer your question, my trajectory was I get into medical sales. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had a great mentor and a friend in Todd. He just had been with the company 12 years. I think at that point, one of the most decorated reps in the company, really just taught me the basics. And I think he saw something in me I didn't see in myself. And he cultivated that, and he helped me get to where I was trying to go very quickly.
You were quickly one of the top reps in the country.
So I joined in August of 2005. Todd took a promotion to become a manager in January of 2006, and by the end of 2006, I was the #1 rep in the country.
For
Stryker.
For Stryker as a whole, or for
my division?
For your division. Yeah.
So out of 174 reps, I was #1.
Yeah, and
in
that's
1 year.
That's a competitive space.
Yeah. So I did that, and then Todd became my manager for the remainder almost of my career, minus the last 3 years, and I won every major award, every major accolade you could win. I started carrying multiple divisions of Stryker, got into different spaces, learned the capital side, learned the service side.
What's the difference?
So when you're doing implant, it's very different because you're selling what you're selling that day, meaning if you were to have like
it's transactional, like a
mandible fracture, right? Yeah. You're going in, you have mandible fracture. Somebody's going to come in and say, okay, I'm using Stryker for that case, or I'm using DePuy, I'm using Zimmer, whoever it may be. So when you have that case, it may be a $3,500 case, $4,500 case, whatever it is, but that's your case, right? That's your comp for that day. So there's a lot of times where they may want to use somebody else because they may see a product benefit or whatever the case may be, right? So it was just different. And
the other side was more service-based contracts.
The other side was more capital, right? So if you have a drill, like think of a hardware drill, you're going in and you're selling these surgical drills that you're using for, sagittal saw cuts or femur cuts or whatever.
Hacksaw's not good enough?
Hacksaw's no good. No. Well, back in the day, it served the purpose, got the job done. But, you're selling that, you're selling the power, then you're selling the service component of it as well, right? So
it's like super involved.
Super involved.
Like you really have to be able to retain, you have a lot of liability on you. At the end of the day, it's Stryker, but, you do one thing wrong, your ass is probably barred from the industry. So that's a lot of pressure for a young guy, and then to eat that pressure and be so competitive and hungry and excel the way you did is extremely impressive. How long were you at Stryker until you decided to kind of start doing your own
15 years. 15 years at Stryker.
How is that feeling? And anytime you're a good producer, whether it be finance, medical sales, any corporate company, they don't make it easy when you're trying to leave. And you're also a little torn, right? This place has given me a great
100%.
life. And at the time, you bought a beautiful home. You owned another property in Manayunk still. Wow. You had a beautiful home outside of Philly. Yep. You were married, living good. What made you say, I want to try something different after having all that success? And how was that exit?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, right? So, I mean, you have to, and I think this goes for everything, and you've been through it, right? You have ebbs and flows in anything. And there was a year where I went from being one of the top guys and we got bid out on an RFP, and one of my biggest accounts essentially was looking toward a competitor for 6 months. I lost 80% of my volume to a competitor as they were doing the eval. And that was tremendously challenging for me, right? Because you have the majority of your income is tied up into that. So you could either look at it as like, okay, I'm screwed, I'm down on myself, this is terrible, right? Like, what am I gonna do? So for me, I looked at it and I was like, all right, well, where could I make more money? Where could I sell on the other side of the fence? So I carried multiple divisions, put my focus on other divisions, built up my income that way, and just trying to figure it out, right? So that was like a 1.5 year period that made me realize that there's always going to be these fluctuations in the business. And for me, I wanted something different because I felt like I've done everything I could do from a rep level. They wanted me to come in corporately, and I would have loved to have done that, but at the same time, it wasn't what I wanted for my own personal growth.
Yeah, and your lifestyle.
It wasn't even the lifestyle. It was more just like I felt I've learned and done so much at this point. How can I get to where I want to be this much better, and how quickly can I get there? And Stryker would have got me there, but it would have got me there a lot slower than I wanted to go.
Yeah.
Right. And I was 40 at the time. And I was like, okay, well, I could spend time going up the ladder very slowly, or I could challenge myself and jump here and learn all this stuff and then figure out where I am at this point. So you're exactly right. Stryker, everything that Stryker gave me put me to where I am right now, because they gave me all the tools, they gave me all the opportunity, they gave me the training when I wanted it. But for me, I felt like I hit a level to where I would have slowed down my development professionally if I would have stayed with Stryker. And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to challenge myself. I felt like I was at the top of my game. I felt like I could continue to improve. And the only way I could have done that was making the move to start my own entity and do what I did with S2 and my brother and my other business partner and get where we are. And that turned out to be very true. And it's put me where I am now.
Yeah, it's really a hard thing, but I think anybody who is somebody like myself and yourself, we're constantly working on personal development, personally. We all have flaws, and I want to get into a story later about your sister when we go into politics.
Sure.
We'll kind of come back and go down the road a little bit of what that threw into your life, and some of the stuff that spun you, for a loop.
Yep.
And but when we're doing that type of work every day, and we're putting ourselves around people who want to make us better, and we're looking to achieve more for our family, I think everybody kind of hits a ceiling at some point. There's no more staying with GM for 40 years. There's no more staying with a large bank or any corporation for 20, 30, 40 years. It's unheard of. I have a client, Steve Franco, that works for Torcon. I was just meeting him this week. He's there 45 years.
Right.
That's unheard of.
Right.
You know, it's not really conducive for the corporate side, right? You know, a lot of the medical device guys, just like any sales, they start to, you know, slash your territory, increase your target, so it's harder to make the same money. And, you know, they, you know, kind of in a sense want to drive you out. And then you continue to want to better yourself and maybe have some more autonomy like you had, being your own business owner. So you then say, I'm going to partner up with a gentleman at the time. What was his name again?
Nino.
Yep. And say, I'm going to launch this S2 company. Explain a little bit of what S2 was and how it somewhat differed from what you were doing at Stryker.
Yep. Yeah. Well, first of all, you hit the nail on the head, though. I mean, complacency is the antithesis of progress, right? If you get complacent, you could be complacent making $600,000, $700,000 a year, but you could be making $2.5 million if you don't take that risk on yourself, right? So I think valid point. The stuff with the S2 just kind of came about because I had a guy that I worked with at Stryker on the orthopedic side for years as kind of a counterpart. Him and I had known each other since I started, so going on 15 years, great guy, that was trying to pull me aside, and he's like, look, we got to do something different. We got to do something outside of this because we're essentially getting to the point where, you know, he was being marginalized. He wasn't happy with where he was. And he knew my brother and I had kind of formed S2 on the back end. So I actually formed S2 with my brother in 2017 to help him when he moved into the area. I connected him through a spine connection, a medical device, and he kind of came out and did his own thing and did a great job and succeeded. And I helped him kind of give the infrastructure for it, more in a consulting sense, right? Like I wasn't actively out there selling product or doing any of that. So, yeah, so we partnered up and created S2 at that time as a partnership. And then Nino kept trying to pull me over into the orthopedic space with this other company called Smith & Nephews, one of Stryker's competitors. And we had a lot of overlap where people knew both of us from our success at Stryker. Nino was one of the most successful Stryker reps in their history, as I was in my own respective division. Rothman Institute, right? A name that is very well known throughout most of the country, but specifically in the Mid-Atlantic. Nino knew Dick Rothman very well, had a great relationship, built it up, made it a Stryker powerhouse. But to your point, they marginalized them. And this is something Stryker got away from that, in my opinion, led a lot of people to kind of leave Stryker and go into different areas because they got away from who made them successful. They minimalized the rep relationship and they started to cut big territories like Nino's, where he may have had 12 million. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to put 3 different ASRs and you're going to cut out, eventually you're going to have 4 million. And you're not respectful to the person that built that business and the sweat equity that went into it. So Nino had been plugging me for a long time and wanting to bring me over. And then we started to have discussions in like 2018. And this company, Smith & Nephew, was very aggressive and you know, trying to get us over, and we all agreed. So Nino and I actually went over and signed our deal, and I left Stryker in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
With a big trip on the table. So I'd won the biggest trip that Stryker has to offer. It's called the Leibinger Club, which goes back to like their original statement days and startup days. But that was where you go to Europe, all expenses paid for 7 days. My wife was going to come, so she wasn't happy I left at that time. But.
You know what? Well, you were going to make your own money and have your own trips, and you've done a ton of those since. So, you know, in financial services, it's always like, oh, we're going to, the other day my partner was like, you're going to come to France, right? We're going to, what is that fancy water area in France?
Versailles.
It's a big tourist area. I forget, and I'm like, I'm not really that motivated by it. I kind of want to go on my own vacations and not have to play the game.
You're I'd rather go to Tahoe.
Yeah, exactly. Do my own thing.
Right.
But I think what happens is vice presidents, senior vice presidents above the sales channel start to make less than the very successful reps. And then the CEO seeing a line item, and I don't think they ever envision a lot of times, well, you can have a rep making 800 to $2 million a year.
Right.
And then they're going, well, there's a huge savings that we can have and suck back into the company to grow operations or whatever their, agenda was at the time.
Right.
But you're cutting out the legs of the people who helped you get there. And I think it's a bad idea. I know Amex did it recently over the past couple of years with a certain part of their division and kind of brought all the sales internally. Mm-hmm. They had a lot of reps making a lot of money. And it was like, hey, this was never designed to be this way. Right. Why not? If the business is getting done and it's good business and the customers are happy and the reps are happy, why cut commissions? I think that's the worst thing you could ever do in any type of company is cut commissions. And I know things have to change if you're hurting and there's no business going on at all. I get it. But that's a really tough thing to do. Let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back. So hopping back in.
Yep.
Get back on topic. So you guys land all these connections. You joined Smith. What were you guys doing exactly that was different than Stryker?
Yeah, so I think, it goes back to like undervaluing relationships, right? So Nino and I had both been in Jefferson Health specifically in the Philadelphia grid for 20 or 30 years.
How many hospitals were in Philly? Or right outside too?
80. I mean, if you think about it. But wow. Jefferson, Penn, Mainline Health, big IDNs, right? Yeah. So IDNs are integrated delivery networks that you're kind of working through. And it just, for us, it made so much sense to finally have an opportunity to move out of being reps and skipping the managerial component, like I told you about, to where you're going to essentially be marginalized. You're going to move up the ladder. So you could be a sales manager, and then you're going to be a VP, and then you're going to be like this in 15 years. And I just felt like, for me, it was stunning my development of where I wanted to go professionally. And I knew I could do more, and I knew I had the knowledge and the skill set to be better. So when this came about, it was basically starting our own medical device distributorship. So when you have a distributorship, you're partnering with certain manufacturers, so like Smith & Nephew or other partners, but then you have equity. Mm-hmm. So you build it up, and then eventually they buy you out, when they decide to go direct.
So were you selling the same type of product?
So for me, I wasn't. That was a big change for me. So I went from selling craniomaxillofacial, and then I started going to hip and knee reconstruction. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely different. I mean, that was a challenge for me, right? Like I went for something I've been selling for 15 years to something completely different, but we still had a lot of the ancillary like biologics lines that we were carrying through the distributorship that were profitable that I still was helping to manage with Nino, my brother. So that's like all the kind of bone filler stuff and like hydroxyapatite and basically spackle for bones, right?
Yeah. Get the Bondo out.
Bondo, and I mean that was it for us. So like we had this profitability component, but then we had like our core implant component between spine, hip, and knee. So it was different, but it was a challenge that we all wanted to kind of do together, and I think
You saw the upside.
Saw the upside, but the equity component is huge, right? Because when you're a W-2 and you're working for a company like Stryker, you're expendable.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, Stryker could fire me and I have nothing.
So how did that equity deal look? So how large was that company that you guys went into? What was their market cap?
We went in and we essentially bought into like a $12 million recon business, $3 million spine business. This is all stuff. The spine specifically would develop, the recon was already there. Is that
kind of what they do with the new doctors now? They have them kind of buy in, they compress their comp down, they have them buy in for a certain period of time and front loaded it, and then
that's more on like the surgery center side, right? Like if you see like a lot of surgeons, surgeons, anything that could be same day surgery now, you see a lot of surgeons that are buying into their own surgery center, control the margins, get the reimbursements.
I'll tell you what, you're selling to doctors. Yeah. Get them in that window where they feel broke and their comp is compressed. They're maybe make it $250 after that, their residency, and then boom, it's 800 million.
Yeah, but the doctors are being marginalized now too. I mean, with Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement going down, right? So, I mean, you have to think about the amount of education and care that these guys put in. It's unbelievable, and it's a shame because they're so talented and they're amazing. They care about their patients. And
No doctor should ever be limited.
They are, and it's a shame because they're being marginalized by corporate greed, in my opinion, and that's hard to see because the amount of work these guys put in, the hours and the
care, the bedside manner, the emotions, the
100%.
Emotional drain. Oh my God, I can't imagine.
It's really hard to see.
I'm emotionally drained talking to clients about finance.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you have somebody and you have a patient that they pass on the table and the wear that takes on these guys, and they're just phenomenal human beings, heroes in a sense. I mean, they're
definitely heroes.
Yeah,
for sure.
They're doing all these things that we take for granted to a degree. So
I'm gonna flip it real quick, and I'll bring us back. A lot of things about medical has been questioned over the last, at least for me, since COVID. It really woke my eyes up, and I've always been a contrarian. Maybe that's my ODD, that's oppositional defiance disorder. My wife diagnosed me with that.
Yeah.
It was never on my IEP, but I'm a natural rebel.
Right.
In a sense, and I think that's allowed me to think outside the box, and I think it's hurt me at times, but I think more times than not it's helped me win. Like with the COVID shot, I was like, nah, that seems really fucking weird, and you have no history on this, and how did you make a vaccine, and I don't care about warp speed or not. This just seems off to me.
Right.
The whole thing seems off to me, like I'm out. Like I never even got tested for COVID once.
Right.
But you see the information pushed down to the doctors, and they all had to get right on board with the WHO, because that's how corporate greed gets paid, and the doctors are taught that scientific knowledge from the top through inception in school. And I'll talk about my father-in-law's situation. He had, not to be too much TMI, but he shared it with a lot of people. He had colon cancer, C3, and it had spread to multiple areas down there where he was going to have to be on a bag for life. And he was just in his head, had this instinct to once you touch cancer down there, it seems like people are dead in only a matter of time. And I'm sure that's not everybody, and maybe some medical professional will see this and be like, look at this idiot, what does he know? But I'm just speaking through my experience with him, and he ended up with a surgeon at Sloan who had 3 other guys tell him, rip everything out down there, lower intestines, anus, everything, bag for life. Right. And he said, how are we ever going to get the medicine if there's no blood vessels down there anymore? So they came up with a very aggressive radiation and chemo treatment that has kept him cancer free today. He's alive. They said he'd be dead at a 75% rate in 18 months.
Wow.
Never got cut open. Still doing very good today. I'm sure there's health issues there from all of that and the chemo and the drugs and the radiation, but the guy's still alive and thriving.
Right.
So I'm always just, I don't know everything. Doctors do a lot of amazing things. I just hope if a doctor watches this, they have the ability to use their logical smart over their book smart sometimes.
I think that's a valid statement. I could tell you that the guys that I work with do.
I'm sure a lot do.
Yeah, and they, at the end of the day, affiliations aside or whatever it is, they're just trying to do right by the people that are on the table. And 20 years in medical, I think the biggest impact I have for myself was just realizing at the end of the day that could be my mom, my grandma, my grandpa, and you just want to be there and be your best at that time and make sure that you're going to give them the best service.
Matt, is this going to be like Big Matty, is this going to be like a hurricane right now? Yeah, the wind's getting a little crappy. There's some bigger drops. We'll keep rolling. Keep rolling the tape. Don't edit it out. So I'll bring us back. Something that popped in my ADD head. So the total company was all in what? How much revs?
24 million.
24 million. So in the scheme of things, not that big. It's not like it had a $500 million market cap.
Yep.
So they were on their way up.
24 million. We joined in 2019, had 2 years of COVID, right?
Yeah.
So
What a great time to join.
Great timing. I leave Stryker after 15 years, join in June of 2019. COVID hits in February of 2020. Totally marginalizes everything we do. That in itself was a challenge. Keeping our team together, going through RTC, PPP, understanding how all that stuff worked, becoming an accountant, becoming like
Wear all hats quick.
wear all hats quick. But you know what? You and I have said this, and I think challenge makes you grow stronger because you learn more. And the way you learn more most of the time is being forced into it. And I had to learn a lot. I had to put a lot on my back, but it made me better now. And
You said it earlier, though.
yeah,
Someone like yourself and myself, we choose to force ourselves.
100%.
So yes, you could be forced into it. So let's just say this is 10 years out and you're here.
Yep.
You could wait for that force to have that step up in growth, or you could force it here and force it here and force it here.
Yep.
So by the time you get to here, you're so far beyond what you've been, and time is your most valuable asset.
Yeah.
For everything.
100%.
So force yourself into uncomfortable situations. I do it annually. I said, what's the next thing I could do where I bite off more than I could really chew?
Yep.
And then figure out how to chew it.
Yep.
And it's big.
But it's a mentality thing too, right? I think if you have a victim mentality of like, oh, why is this happening to me? Or, oh, I've got to deal with this bullshit.
You lost already.
You lost already, 100%. Like, stop looking at it like that. Every challenge you have in your life makes you better at the end of the day because you have to learn how to address that challenge. Every problem has a solution. You have to take time to try and find it. If you're too arrogant to think that I'm just going to fix this or I'm just going to do that without really vetting what you're trying to do, you
Spinning your
lose
wheels.
right ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not how you have to think through the process. And I say this all the time, and you and I have talked about this, right? Like, humility to me is a powerful tool. And I think I've seen a lot of people go through their careers and feel entitled and feel like, oh, I know better than this, or I know better than that. I want to learn every day. I want to learn from the people that are, working with me. And if they have a better opinion than I have, you have to put the ego aside and understand that their solution is better than yours. But that's how it should be. Because,
I spent $100,000 in coaching last year.
But yeah, but again, right?
Learn.
You have to learn. Again, if you are compliant with where you are, if you're just happy with where you are and you're stagnant in your life, you're never going to develop. I could have stopped a long time ago making...
But you're dead at that age.
Yeah, but again, I could have stopped a long time ago making 7 figures and been happy. I never wanted to do that. And it's not because I'm chasing money. I'm not chasing money.
And we like nice things. And I know you do.
I
Right?
do,
A couple
but
golf courses you belong to.
I'm chasing personal development. I'm chasing what I could give back to my community. I'm chasing how I could be a better human being and be a better citizen on this planet.
I say this all the time.
Yeah.
You need Bernie and Ryan who are chasing down, career goals that give us the liquidity to give our friends, especially family,
Yep.
and community. But you also need Pete Riley, who's the wrestling coach.
Yep.
And maybe he's not as motivated to go chase down $2 million a year and have a helicopter like me, or have a beach home and a beautiful house that you do out in PA.
Yep.
And that's okay too. Like literally, and that's something that took me a while to get over. I've really had a learning curve the last 3 years where I'm doing some individual coaching because I see so much more for everyone. I'm like, no, you can go here, dude, but maybe they just want to go here.
Right.
And a lot of times when you're super motivated, people throw the money at you, and it's like, it's not about the money. The money is what helps me fund Pete as the coach in the community.
Yep.
Or fund other things in our lives for our family, for our community to better everything around us. And it takes money. And if you don't think it takes money, you're completely naive.
Yep.
So fast tracking S2 until today.
Yep.
How much did you guys grow the company? How did you do it? What was the most important thing?
Having a great team, working through a lot of personnel challenges and turnover, and that's never easy, right?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I think the team I have now today, I have 22 people. 3 of them are the team that I had when I came on board, right? So
They're pillars, though, those people.
But they are. One in particular, in Philadelphia has been my guy, but then I have these other team members that have also joined that have just been phenomenal. And I think it's a matter of recognizing and appreciating talent, being humble, being grateful, even though you're a leader in their company, just being grateful that they're on your team and showing them appreciation, understanding like, hey, what can I do to help you personally and professionally? This isn't about what can I squeeze out of you from a sales point to make me more money? How can I help you be happy? How can I make you a better person and feel fulfilled in what you're doing? And if you don't ask those questions, you're not being a good leader because you're only self-serving. So I think
we talked about this with this guy, Craig Lynch, Spring Lake guy, and he's in the credit card space, worked at Amex for years. I met through my father-in-law, and he talked about that exact thing a few weeks back. He's like, I don't really want to get in your personal life too much because it's not my business what's going on with your girlfriend, your wife, your husband, or what's going on at home. But I also need to know what's going on at home because if your sales are lagging and it's affecting what you're doing at work, which maybe puts you at risk, customers at risk, patients on the table at risk, I need to kind of help you address what's going on there. And I think that's where it comes into being somebody who was motivated to win and make money, but now you want to turn around and teach. And I think the people who have the biggest struggles, I'm not saying all of them, but I think a good percentage of them do want someone to mentor. When I first came up in finance and I would meet prospects, I would be like, why is this guy giving me a chance? Like, I know he has other advisors around him that are more experienced, but he saw something in me, or she would see something in me that maybe reminded them of their younger self. And I think that's who you are as a person. Like, you were definitely motivated to win. You had some type of chip and big goal, right? And now you're like, hey, I did a lot of that. I'm really excited to help other people achieve that. And then when you actually flip to that abundance mindset, you make more money than you ever did.
I totally agree, Ryan. I think, the biggest mistake I see people make are chasing financial. Well, I don't want to say that, right? Like, I think it's good to have financial goals. Like, hey, I want to buy this car. I want to buy this boat. Great. At the end of the day, when you start to get into something that you're so passionate about, it doesn't feel like that anymore. And then you start to supersede that mentality. And I think that's where you become fulfilled, not only financially, but just as a person, right? And the biggest successes and joys that I get in my career are seeing my team win and seeing, I just won a trip last year. I told you I went to Cabo last week. Trip I won through the company, and I had one of my top reps out there, and it was just great to share that with him, right? And see him and see his wife and be able to enjoy that.
And you know that you're a part of that.
Right.
But you hear his wife talking about where they live or where they're moving.
Right, but you know what? I'm a small part of it. Those guys, again, from a humility
they did the work.
They're my ground game. They're my team. They're the guys that got me to where I am. On that level where I am right now in that company. And if it wasn't for those guys, I would not have been on that trip. So again, it's just, you get so many people that have egos in our industry, and it's like, oh, I've done this, I've done that. It's like, look, man,
come into finance.
Yeah, it could all go away in an instant, right? Have humility, treat the janitor the same way you treat the CEO, and you're going to be successful in life. Be kind, just be humble. Always have that humility, and you're going to always maintain the business. The minute you think that business is yours, it can be taken away.
Yeah, you got to almost live with a paranoid state. And some people say, like, that's weird, Ryan. Like, no, like, I live kind of with a fear of failure. Not that I don't believe I'm going to continue to win, but I'm also smart enough to know that, boom, it could change like that. And it keeps me super focused because, it's easy to get distracted and drift.
100%.
So the company today, how big is that company?
Yeah, so we grew, when I took over the recon component of our business, we did $12 million in 2018. We did $20 million, or we're on pace to do $20 million this year. So post-COVID.
That's great.
So that's only recon. That's not including our spine, biologics, everything else. So,
And where are you at today with that company, and what are you guys looking to do?
Yeah, so I mean, we're projecting $30 million this year. I don't know. I'm looking at different opportunities right now. I've got a few different things that we're exploring, but at the end of the day, I'm just grateful to work with my team, my brother, and continue to build out with something that started out as like a crazy dream, because you got to remember too, my partner, the guy Nino, passed away from COVID in 2021, right? So here we go. We go on this journey together. 2019, leave Stryker together. And then
Life
2020,
happens.
COVID hits. 2021, I lose my business partner, and that was like just shell shock, because he was kind of my big brother in the industry and somebody I learned a lot from and I looked up to. And having lost him at that time, it was kind of like, okay, can I really do this on myself? And for the first time, I was self-doubting, right? Like, okay, there's a lot of eyes on me.
I think it's healthy, though, to a certain degree.
Yeah, 100%.
It's that paranoia again.
Paranoia again. But, it's... that was 2021, and we were teetering at that point, and we haven't missed a number since. So I think, look, challenge is, like I said, it's nothing but an opportunity to better yourself. Yeah. So I think everybody could look at a challenge any way they want, but at the end of the day, I think you look at a challenge as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to take a challenge and be better for what you're doing in a few years.
This is a great segue into where I want to go. At this part of the show, I've kind of brought in trending topics, and it's been politics driven.
Sure.
Because I think it's go to the bar, don't talk politics. Don't talk politics at the kids' event. Us not talking politics for 30 years got us where we currently are in this country. Whether you're left, right, center, brown, white, black.
Sure.
We're all Americans, and it seems to be almost like it's a master plan to not have America be what it once was. And again, everything needs to evolve. I'm not ignorant to that. But what is going on in this country is absolutely insane. And, to talk about what's going on at the border is a tragedy. And not only for America and the girl that ends up in a horrible situation, to, jobs lost and then. And I get it's horrible for these people that have to leave their country and take that trek from Ecuador or Colombia through Mexico, or escaping China or other horrible parts, Africa of the world. Mm-hmm. I get it. I want to give those people an opportunity, but you got to do it the right way, and we got to vet the bad people. A lot of these, countries are releasing their worst prisoners, and let them go over to America. Let them deal with them. And we see all these rapes and murders, and you had a very tragic thing go on in your life due to an illegal immigrant. I want you to touch on that if you would.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was definitely the worst thing that happened in my life. I mean, going back to earlier and what we said, a lot of the motivation I had in my life and what drove me to attain, a certain level of success was trying to be better for my family, for my sister and brother, and be able to lend opportunity to them and be able to lend support to them when they needed it. And it was a big driving factor for me throughout my career. And then in 2010, my sister, who was at ASU, was tragically killed by an illegal immigrant during not an armed robbery, I shouldn't say that, but she was leaving an IHOP, and this guy tried to grab her purse and did it from a moving vehicle, and she hit her head and passed away. And, it's something that altered mine and my family's life for the rest of our lives. And, I've got 3 little girls that are never going to meet their aunt. My brother's got a beautiful little baby girl that's never going to meet his aunt or meet her aunt. Parents are definitely not the same. I'm not the same. And
that poor girl never got an opportunity to have her own children.
Never had an opportunity to have her own children, never had an opportunity to build her career. She used to joke around with me, and, the worst part is she was set to graduate in June. So, this happened, 2010 in May, and it just was like clock punched, right? And it was just such a difficult time for everybody. It challenged me as a person.
It threw me into
a loop, and that's something, again, I think we all learn from things that you go through, and it was definitely something for me. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit I was self-destructive and
partying hard and working hard.
Not even that. It was a lot, right? Like my parents, unfortunately, were totally just they couldn't deal with it.
Yeah, and I get it.
Right. So I tried to step up as the older sibling and try to do what I could, but it turned out to be a lot more. I had we were going through the murder investigation. We were going out to Arizona constantly and dealing with detectives and the press, and it started to just suck the life out of me. And then all of a sudden, you fast forward a year, I'm getting a call from the murderer's cousin who wound up convicting the guy. She finds me on Facebook, and I have to have these conversations. It was just a shitstorm for a year, right? So it was definitely a very challenging time in my life that could have broke me. I think having love for somebody in your family is not a fault. It's something you admire, and you just look at it and you say, man, I'm so happy I had so much love for my sibling. And it was at a point where it could have definitely put me on a different path, but I had a great wife who stood by me. I had a great family who picked me up. My brother and I found solace in our relationship, became best friends, and I had some good friends around at the time that picked me up and tried to pick me up. And then my wife and I got pregnant, and the switch started to flip a little bit. But it was definitely a dark time. And I think it goes back to what you and I talked about, right? You could let dark times bring you down for a little bit, but at the end of the day, the type of person you are is going to be defined by the outcome. And going through that, as tough as it was, it made me who I am now, and so much more grateful and appreciative of the time I have with my family and my parents and my siblings and, just my kids. And
say your sister's full name. Beautiful.
Yeah, Kylie Sousa. So, it was a big deal here. She has a, nice memorial over at Brielle Cemetery. And, the stuff politically, it's tough to swallow right now. And it's.
There's rapes and murders and disgusting things going on every single day to stupid shit, right? Jumping, and it's not stupid whatsoever. It's horrible, but, jumping a NYPD officer and being out of jail 10 minutes later, and it's just what the fuck do we have going on? And I can only imagine how enraged and frustrated it gets you and your loved ones when you see this going on and have such a personal, emotional attachment to that.
I have an emotional attachment to my country, and my sister's side. It's frustrating to see the degradation of our country from every level, and it's a shame.
Is it on purpose?
It is on purpose.
But for what?
Because you have a leftist movement that is essentially trying to break every pillar of our country and just globalize us, right? And this is something I think that started with Democratic movement and Obama.
Yeah, 100%.
But at the end of the day, you can't be villainized for being a patriot. That's not being American. You can't be villainized for being a cop that's doing your job. You can't be villainized for condemning people that are hanging Palestinian flags and condemning the atrocities that happened on October 7th. So, you know what? At the end of the day, we have a puppet president that has a Democratic Party that's got their hand up his ass. He can't speak two words. I know that because I met him. And he's a moron, and I met him at his daughter's wedding in 2012. I said he was a moron then. I'll say he's a moron now. He's just not a sharp guy. So
you wonder how that guy got there, and the only thing that comes to my mind is just sheer corruption.
It's 100% corrupt, but
usable idiot as well.
Well, think about it, right? So if you have the Democratic Party right now, and you have all their policies that are being implemented with a guy that has no conviction, no spine. Look at his policy on abortion. He's flip-flopped on abortion over the last 12, 15 years consistently.
Yeah.
Right?
Everything.
But then you look at Israel, right? our staunchest ally, withholding an arms shipment. This guy has no moral clarity and conviction. He's a spineless coward, and he's our president because the left is puppeting out there because they could essentially control the narrative.
I'm going to say something contrarian. I do not believe this.
Right.
But I see a lot of narrative pushing against Israel.
Yeah.
A lot. And I think that this type of president and his people will try to appease the voters, right? Elections coming up. And whether it's right, wrong, I definitely don't like to see genocide and 17,000 children killed in Palestine at all. I don't like to see innocent people over in Israel killed at all. My personal belief on it is like, it's not my fucking problem. Like, America has so many damn problems. We have an invasion at our own border, right? We have, homeless after homeless after homeless in the most pretty cities in the country. We have falling down bridges, roads. We need to insulate ourselves and protect ourselves from, a different war that I think we're already currently in. If we're going to a World War III, and even with Ukraine and Russia, not just Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, Russia. I get it. You don't want Russia to encroach, on Poland and NATO and. I'm not a dumb guy, but did we get Ukraine into that? Did the U.S. government do that? Again, I don't know, but the Israel thing is very interesting for me to watch because you see a lot of people that really aren't even that political that just are pushing back on supporting that. It's really wild to watch. And again, I can't say a side I am on.
Right.
I really can't. I'm not saying that to be coy, but I just don't know. I just know that my country needs help.
Well, so you touched on a few things, right? The Israel thing aside, let's not even think of that. Let's think about how fucked up our country is right now. Let's just talk honestly about this. What do you do for a living, Ryan?
I do income management.
Okay, so if you look at the country, are we upside down?
I think it's. I don't even know the word. It's more than upside down.
Okay, so you have a president that's forgiving student loans from people that willingly took on student loans. That's then distributing that to every single taxpayer in our country. Mm-hmm. You have a president that's assimilating $500 billion a year to support illegal immigration that is not even baseless. Legal immigration. It is completely just like open the door, you come in.
Bro, they're helping them. They're giving them phones. They're giving them boat rides, bus rides, pickup rides.
The people in Denver, right, today gave a list of demands to disperse their encampment. We want lawyers. We want our own houses to cook our own meals. We want this.
And people, for a fact, are being fed that information by somebody that works with the government. And the government then has to award it because of our stupid ass policies.
But it's not stupid ass policies as much as we have stupid ass people.
Correct.
And
same difference.
Let's be honest. So for anybody watching this, wake the fuck up because you're being manipulated by a bunch of idiots that think they're better than you. And they constantly sit there and think that they're telling us what is best for us. Biden literally was on CNN yesterday, did an interview at CNN, which gets as friendly as it could be, could not speak through the interview, falsely declared that Trump, he inherited 9% inflation from Trump. 9%. It was 1.6 when he took over for Trump, right? Biden's a fucking liar. He's always been a liar. He's an egomaniac, like I told you. So I went to his wedding, his daughter's wedding. He literally had wallpaper of his own press clippings at his brother's house in the bathroom. So it's not bad enough that I'm at this wedding because I hate Joe Biden, but I love my friend. And I have to look at Joe Biden while I'm taking a piss.
Yeah,
it's
weird.
In fact, I mean, it was just terrible.
You can have a painting or two in your house or your office, I guess.
But I mean, at the end of the day,
a lot of these guys are power driven.
But it's not even power driven. What they're trying to do is fundamentally change the structure of our country.
Politicians are power driven, though.
They are. But look at what Alan Dershowitz said, right? At what point do you diminish the value of being a citizen any further than what we are today? The Republicans just put out a bill that passed in Congress that said, You have to be an American citizen to vote in our elections. The Democrats won't even vote on it in the Senate. It's a federal law as it is
And we don't
to
wanna
be an
enforce it.
American citizen,
Yeah.
but we have no way to enforce it.
Yeah.
And we're bigots and everybody else, we're misogynistic because we're trying to enforce our own laws.
We just want you to show up with some ID to vote. I mean, I
No,
don't think it's that much.
I mean, is
to ask.
it that much to ask? Can you go to Paris and vote?
Nope. They could vote though from Paris and
Yeah,
Ireland
100%.
and wherever else if they're ever a citizen here.
No, but it's just, look, the reality is if you love your country, you love what our country has stood for all the times all the years that it's been founded, you're a Republican. If you don't love your country and you're a misogynistic bigot on the left,
And I want to
You're a
make
Democrat.
I want to make a complete line. Government, country. Government, country.
yeah,
There's 12 million people that work for the U.S. government, and I don't think all of them are bad at all. I think a lot of them are good.
Yep.
They just don't have the quite power. And then there's country, the people.
yep,
The U.S. people are amazing people. Anytime there's been a horrific thing that's going on around the world, the money that's funded to the Red Cross and all these other charitables all around the world,
Right.
all around the world, the U.S. people step up. Does the U.S. government? Yes, but theirs is tactful and for many other reasons. And again, nor do I have a perch, and I know what's going on in the intelligence space or military space and all the things that go on there at that complex level.
Right.
So some of their moves we may not truly understand, and maybe we can't ever. But what they've been doing, especially the last 10 years, definitely the last 4, it just seems like sheer destruction of this country. And that's not a representation of the majority of the people. And I want to reach out to anybody who thinks different than me if you watch this show and you come
Yep.
across it because you know Bernie, like I love you. You know, like if you're a good person and you have integrity, you have good morals and ethics, you work really hard. Yes, we all have mistakes. We all do stupid shit that we wish we could take back. We're only human. But if your intent is always in the right place, I fuck with you. You
Yeah.
know? The trans community and all of that, like, I don't. I think that's evil. I don't understand it. And purely, I don't want to understand it. But everybody else, we're all have a lot more in common than we think we do.
Well, it's common sense, right? And that's the thing that we agree
Lax,
on.
yeah.
Right. So, like, it shouldn't be politics. It should be common sense discussion. I don't, but trans people, hey, trans, do you. Great. You want to compete in women's sports where I have 3 girls? Do your own trans league.
That's the stuff I'm talking about. I'm not,
Yeah,
if you want to go
yeah.
hang out at a hotel and
Yeah,
you're an adult
but-
and you're not bothering kids, go do it.
100%. So I've got 3 girls. You think I'm going to let my girls compete against a trans athlete that has an advantage?
The UK just put a law in place that said no single bathrooms, men,
100%.
women. The UK did it before the US. Come on.
Well, 100%. But that's, again, because you have people that are playing politics instead of common sense. And that is...
And they don't even care. They're on the other side for a completely different agenda. It has nothing to even do with if they agree with it or not.
No, and then you factor in all this kind of stuff, right? So where you're marginalizing the people that we're supposed to be protecting, women, Title IX, all this stuff. What Title IX
They're
was
crushing
formed
women.
for was protection of women's sports.
Yeah.
So you're protecting women's sports by allowing trans people in. Makes no sense.
What I love though is that people like my wife,
Yeah.
who have been quiet their whole life, I don't think they paid a shit ton to politics whatsoever. They're wise, they're smart, and they have kids.
Yeah.
So now that woman instinct kicks in, and it's like, well, what about my son? What about my daughter's future?
Yep.
And they start paying attention. I mean, the moms on Instagram and social media, you know, the food that we're consuming,
Yep.
the chemicals, like the conspiracies that were once conspiracies, now all coming true. Like, these women are united. And I know the country has a brighter future. Like, it definitely does. We have a fight to the end. And it almost seems like, you know, we're at this breaking point where it's going to go really, really, really bad, or we're going to go really, really, really good and take off to a level this country has never seen in a positive way.
Unfortunately, I think, you know, we're at a disadvantage as conservative Republicans where it could go very, very heavily on the other side because you have to think of what's occurred, right? And this is something that the congressman and I talked about the other day. And he said, the damage that has been done by this president is so irreversible that even if we were to stop what we're doing today, the implications are going to be felt for a decade. Because you have, God forbid we get into a war with China or something happens with China and we have 40,000 now military-age men that have come across the border completely non-vetted. Yeah. At the admission of Alejandro Mayorkas, that literally we have no idea who these people are. They'd be Chinese. We're not asking them the questions, right? So you have them. Then you factor in the fact that all these people from other non-friendly countries have come in.
We have drained our ammunition.
And again,
I'm not saying we're going to an old school battlefield like we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. Right. I think it's a new age war.
Right.
But again, if you have adversaries that may attack you, I think it'd be really good to have some ammunition built up.
Well, even so, right? Like you look at the hundreds of people that came over a 4-year span with Trump, 1,200 people, and we've got 40,000 Chinese. They're here. How does that make sense from a defensive standpoint?
Yeah, well, here's the contrary to that. Everybody in America came to America for a better life.
Right.
China is definitely a shitty place to live. And I think a lot of people who don't get down with the CCP, wanted to come over to freedom, right? Mm-hmm. And what I would say to those people is like, war is war. And unfortunately, that person that's seeking to come into America, there's a legal route that takes a lot longer, that vets you and lets you in. And I think that's your dues that you have to pay to become a member of this country. Just like you go to a country club. You got to pay your down payment. You got to pay some annual dues. You got to do some work to make some friends in the club to get the best tea time, right?
Right.
Like, you have to come in here and earn your citizenship, and then I'm good with you. But you guys are just coming over the border while China and America are at a really weird space.
China does not allow any of their citizens to come over at all. It's not allowed. So
that's what I ask. How do they get out?
So they're allowed to go. They cannot go back, and they have to constantly report to China. We have Chinese police stations here in the U.S.
Right in New York City.
Right in New York City. Yep. So
and they have their own rules.
Their own rules. They're operating independently in our country.
Yeah.
The problem is we have no leadership. I don't care if you don't like Trump. He could be an asshole. He could be a misogynistic prick. Whatever. It doesn't matter. His values and principles from a core policy standpoint are American. Joe Biden is anti-American. He is essentially pushing this country into a world war. Look at what's happened. 30% inflation in 4 years. Look at China's spy balloon. No pushback on China. No pushback on Iran. Everything that's happened here has been direct correlation because you don't have a leader that can even function. And he's not functioning. He's a puppet spokesperson.
Yeah, he's not doing anything.
No, he's not going back in and saying, well, I don't know about this. He's okay. He's going out and essentially speaking what they're telling him to speak. That's it.
So let's say leadership. Trump's America, and a lot of these threats are there's a multitude of reasons, but it's driven by money.
Right.
And so we're producing our own oil. The economy's doing really, really well. The dollar's strong. And let's say you're Putin on the other end, and you're like, do I really want to poke that bear? I can't really read that guy. He's kind of crazy, Like, that's a good position to have as a leader, somebody who's respected and somebody who can't really be figured out. You don't know. And someone would say, well, that's also volatile. You know what? It's strategically volatile, and he understood it. He was sitting there with Xi Jinping.
Yep.
At his Mar-a-Lago house, and that's when he sent that rocket over to, I think it was was it Iran or Syria or I forget exactly what it was, and he tapped him. He was like, "Hey pal, like I just bombed that country. Just wanted to let you know."
Yep.
Imagine what that guy was thinking. Like, fuck, this guy's nuts,
Yep.
right? And in the dangerous world that we live in, I want that leader all day long. I'm sorry, I do, because it's a deterrent.
There's nothing to apologize about. I mean, the fact that matters, if you look at Joe Biden and you look at his mental continuity, it's not even there. He could barely get a interview out. He's got the he can't even talk. He's an embarrassment, right? So you have to think of how you and I are having a conversation right now. I met this guy in 2012, right? And he was a moron then. Mm-hmm. And he could barely put a sentence together. Gave the worst wedding speech I ever heard in my life. True story. Like, just terrible. Because he didn't have a teleprompter in front of him.
Yeah.
And, then you get a guy like Trump. Okay, he could be a little brash. He could, put out some mean tweets. I don't care. It's about policy. It's about policy of our country. If you want to have this leftist bullshit policy that's eventually pushing us toward Marxism and socialism, vote left. That's it. If you love your country, you're a patriot, you respect people that serve, you respect cops, you respect people civic duty, vote right. That's it. It doesn't need to be about the candidate, because at the end of the day,
he's only there 4 years.
Yeah. Biden is eventually just going to be this political puppet that's going to continue to be marched out by the left, and he's going to be their mouthpiece. Yeah. Trump, at least he could think for himself. At least he's going to push back. At least he's going to do what's best for the country. If you look at left policies compared to right policies on the far right, they're still benefiting the country. On the left, you're talking about Rashid Tlaib.
I don't know what is benefiting.
Ilhan Omar. These people are actively coming out, supporting Palestine, Hamas, these people that murdered innocent people on October 7th. That is disgusting to me. They should all be kicked out of Congress. And we have to focus on what it is again in our country, which is our country.
And I want to point out again, Hamas and Palestine people, different. Hamas, Palestine people, different.
It is, but it's not, because they're justifying everything right now through Hamas and Palestine, right? So, you cannot sit there and tell me that you're going to have Palestinian people that are not taking any kind of ownership when essentially they vote for Hamas every year.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, maybe they don't have a choice. I mean, did we have a choice?
You can vote for a PAL.
Did we have a choice the last election? Yeah. And I'm not defending that side of it whatsoever.
Right.
I've been somebody who has backed Israel, and I'm a Christian, and my beliefs are more aligned with them than they are the Muslims, but the Palestine, Israel, those issues have gone on for a long fucking time. But I don't disagree. Somebody in Congress who's lobbying on behalf of a terrorist organization, no matter what side you're on, is
well, and all this bullshit with Biden taking 9 days to denounce the student protests. That's not leadership.
Yeah, they love it.
It's not even that. If you look at Biden, right, any leader, whether you're left, right, business, it doesn't matter. You make a decision, you stand by it. This guy has no moral conviction, no compass. Yeah. He's literally
I'll say whatever you tell me to say.
100%, but he's been like that for the last 4 years, right? Oh, immigration's good, immigration's bad. Oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. He doesn't have policy, he does what he's told. So if you have leftist political people that are pulling
who's his handler?
100%. So at the end of the day, could the country survive 4 more years under Joe Biden? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
No,
I think real quick something really bad happens, and your cell phone's not going to work. Recently we had the AT&T.
Oh, I saw that.
And some form of telecom go down. I don't know.
Yeah.
What happens when a cyber attack is really launched by China? You don't think that they have people that can outsmart our talented people?
It might be the 40,000 people that are here now, and looking at our military bases and doing all this stuff. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we just have to get away from this, we want to include everybody and get back to who we are as a country. You can't cede your cultural values as core values.
There's different cultures.
100%. We are who we are. You want to be here, you cede to our values or you don't, right? It's just...
And you know what's great? If you're practicing certain way of life, as long as you're not harming others, you're allowed to do that on your private piece of property that you own in America. You just don't force it on your neighbor who don't fuck with it.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that, and he shouldn't force his on yours either.
Right.
And if either of you hate each other, then you could fucking move. You're not forced to stay there.
Yep.
You know, look at the UK. I mean, there was a buddy of mine that I met, Frank. Frank, I don't know if you ever watched these. I hope you're doing well. I met him in Mexico. They were in the swim-up suite next to us, so we were just shooting shit about politics and Britain versus the U.S. And he's like, dude, we got neighborhoods, and this is back 15 years ago. He's like, we have neighborhoods that the police won't even go into.
Right.
They're petrified to go in there. And again, by no means am I saying all Muslims are bad, but think about what Patrick Bet-David said the other day. He was like, hey, if we don't start having more kids as like Christian Americans or Mormons and so on and so on and so on, like half of Congress will be Muslims.
Yep.
And guess what? They do have a different culture. Good, bad, and different. There's a lot of peaceful Muslims. But, you know, maybe they don't want you to go to work as a woman.
Yep.
You know, their religious beliefs can be very rigid and strict.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, these American women on the left that are like wanting to chant for certain things, you know, have their head chopped off in the street because we're no longer America. You no longer have the freedoms that you had. And people really need to take that serious now more than ever.
I agree, and I mean, I think that's the ignorance of our system, right? Like, you have these people that are out going through these protests on the colleges, and they have no idea
That are gay, trans, they'd get killed in the street. They'd get killed in the street in Palestine.
Gaza.
Yeah,
But, you know, they're going out there protesting, and it just shows, like,
it's pure ignorance.
no, it's not even that. I think they've gotten so complacent with what life is, not knowing what life was on 9/11 and the shock and the just overall appallment we felt as a country, and like how shocking that was for us, right? And like how prideful it was for all of our allies, including Israel, to stand by us, and now we're abandoning them. It's just, again, it goes to this puppet government, and it is just a complete lack of moral conviction, in my opinion. And it's just, I can't stand it. I can't even, I get so fired up talking about it. It's just such a waste of time. But
What are some other, you know, country topics? I won't call them politics.
right.
What other country topics are things that you think need to be focused on? They could be large or small, but overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, just like looking at what we're doing as a country for our young people, I think is the biggest thing, right? Like, when you see how influential our young people are and easily influenced, like, by what's going on right now, that's a complete breakdown of what we're doing as a nation. Like, you have people that are actively going out and protesting with these people that...
I think there's a lot of paid agitators. I think there's a lot.
There's 50%, according to everybody that's been arrested, right? So it's like half and half. But the fact that we're still allowing our youth, and I mean, look, we have young kids, right?
Yeah.
If I pay $50,000 a year and I send my kid out to a college
I ain't
and then
paying.
they come back and they're, yada yada jihad.
Yeah. Or a communist or a Marxist.
What am I doing? Like, all the values you've taught them for 18 years all of a sudden get washed away by people that are in this position of power that think that their opinion is better than ours.
Yeah, because they read some book or they're more worldly or...
100%. Like, at what point does the entitlement
And maybe you
end?
are. I don't give a fuck. I'm here in America. We were built on a certain set of rules.
100%.
And that's the rules that I want to fuck with.
Right. But it's just like this all of a sudden where, the people that love Donald Trump or love our country and we're patriotic and we do these things, we're extremists and we're these people.
Well, that means that there's about 150 million to 200 million that are all extremists, because there's a lot more people that love Trump, voted for Trump, talked a lot of great things about Trump that would never say things publicly because of their job, because of their neighborhood, because of their family, whatever it may be. And the left knows that scares them. I think he'll get over 100 million votes if we get to an election. If they don't do something first.
I agree with you, and I think that's a good statement, but unfortunately I think we all have to get over that, right? Like, we have to start to realize, like, being a Trump supporter is a lot better than being a Biden supporter, where the guy can't get out a statement, is a puppet, is being politicized. His head economic advisor. Did you hear this?
It depends.
Yeah,
It's a new thing every hour.
His head economic advisor. So this guy that's in charge of our economy, you know what his degree is in?
What?
Social work.
Yeah, of course. Social economics.
No, social work.
No, I'm just saying, like.
Yeah, like not even social economics. I'd feel better about that, right? Like social work.
Yep.
Like you have these idiots running the country because they think they are better than us because of their moral clarity.
Yeah,
it's insulting. At what point are the Americans going to take back America?
Yeah, but like, how do you do that, right? You know, voting obviously is one way, but they seem to have a leg up on us all the time in that fact, whether it be cheating or whatever it may be. They mobilize better.
Yep.
What is the alternative, right? Because it's not 1776 where we're like, let's get out our guns and go fight the government. Like, it's so much more complex than that. And I think that they win if that happens.
Yep.
And you have to be more disciplined and do it in a much more tactful way. But we have to strike back, right? Budweiser came out with that shit, Bud Light. Boom, that company took a spanking.
Yes,
Target, spanking.
Yep.
That's the American people saying, fuck you. We're not down with what. How do we continue to do that? Not pay taxes?
No, that's a good question. I mean, the fact that Biden's still up in the polls, right? That scares the shit out of me.
Dude, the polls, that shit I know is a complete farce.
Well, but to your point, right? Like, I think it's getting guys like you and me out and talking. And
but it puts us out there to get fucked with. That's what sucks.
I'm totally okay with getting fucked with. I think at the end of the day, if you're going to villainize me for being a patriot, bring it on. Right?
Yeah, like you're domestic terrorist. You went to your
I don't care.
Your like town meeting. You went to the board meeting. You're a bad guy.
But that's the thing, right? Like, at what point do we allow this narrative to continue until people start to get so loud that you stand up? And I think if we sit here and we honestly continue to be complacent, silence is the mother of all complacency.
They're afraid, dude. People are petrified. People say, I cannot believe, and again, I don't say anything crazy extreme in here, but people are like, I can't believe some of the posts that you put out and like, good for you. Like, we love watching your stuff. And I'm like, why aren't you speaking out? Think about how many people inside of the hospitalization system or in Stryker that you're friends with that believe the same way that you and I do, that would never say a word inside of a work setting.
You know what?
Or post on social media.
100%. And I I've told you that. I love what you post, and I think you speak from the heart. And I think that every person that has the right moral conviction and the right clarity to love this country needs to start speaking up, because if you don't, we're going to get drowned out by this crazy left fucking narrative that's consuming our country right now. It's
evil. It's just pure evil.
It is 100% evil. I mean, you cannot... At what point would our founding fathers, or let's not go back that far. Let's go back to Reagan. Let's see what Reagan would have done if you would have had, George Washington University, where they had him basically in full gear for Palestinian gear and a Palestinian flag up there, and that stood 10 days. You think Reagan would have let that happen?
It's wild.
Reagan sunk the entire friggin' Iranian Navy after they shot a missile at one of our guys. I mean, it's just like, it's unbelievable, man. For whatever reason, we've...
And the left is everything that is evil. What went on in Hollywood over the last 10 years?
Yeah, 100%.
Right? How much came out of all the underage sex with children?
Yep.
The trafficking of children that elitists on the left seem to have their hand in, and/or sadly, either knowing it or not knowing it, the government as well.
Yep.
You see the entertainment business, allegedly, P. Diddy and that crew of people were also partaking in things like Epstein did, and like that's fucking evil.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, I'm not saying I'm the most devout Christian that goes to church every Sunday, but I do believe in a God, and I do believe that, I've been imperfect in my life, but I've never did things with poor intent, and I've always spoke from the heart, and I've always gone off of my moral compass, and someone somewhere is going to protect me from speaking out, and I think that's put in you when
Yep.
you were born into your DNA. I don't think you can learn it.
Yep. I would agree. I mean, look, you go through your life and you accept challenges as they are, right? But at the end of the day, you have to look at the people that make this country, right? And you have to look at our soldiers specifically. And those guys right now are essentially getting marginalized because illegal immigrants are getting more support nationally than the people that fought and have been injured and died for this country, which is pathetic because this guy is trying to win an election. The stuff that he's doing right now in Palestine and the movement that he's trying to make and, I'm not going to send weapons because they can use Rafah. He's doing that not because of moral conviction. He's doing it because he wants to win Michigan. It's pathetic.
Yep.
He's a spineless, gutless coward with no moral clarity as a president, and he's a moron on top of it. And he's a moron in 2024, but he was a bigger moron when I met him in 2012. So where do you go from there, right?
People also don't understand the complexities to what each pocket in America is about. So you referenced Michigan.
Yeah.
Well, Michigan has a very strong Muslim population, right? So going back to politics and someone coaching him on politics, an election coming up, whether he's against Israel, with Israel, if people are dying over there right now and they needed the weapons, he's more worried about, the election.
Yep.
Whatever side he may be on. That's just disgusting. Like, you have to do the right thing and the hard thing.
Yeah, and he's not, like, we're America, right? We're the U.S. We have to set the bar. We have to set the standard. When you have a leader that's this weak, everybody's looking at this and just being like, what
a joke.
Right. So we have our strongest ally in the Middle East, our only ally in the Middle East that we could depend on, that we've now abandoned completely. We're just basically saying, we're not going to send you this because we don't like what you're doing. Meanwhile, right or wrong, when we were attacked, we went in, blew the shit out of Afghanistan and everybody else and killed a whole bunch of people. Look at
was it for the right reasons? That's another topic, another day.
Right, but you think that, and then you think of like what happened with Pearl Harbor. Look what we did to Japan, right? Like,
did we need to send a nuke?
Yeah, well, like at the end of the day, what moral clarity do we have to tell these guys how to fight their war when they were attacked?
Correct.
Again, if you think about the amount,
we shouldn't tell any country.
No, and you think about the amount of civilians that were killed, it's equivalent to 40,000 U.S., right, from a marginal standpoint. We're going to go on the moral high ground and tell them, we're not going to give you weapons because we don't like the way you're fighting this war. And you're our staunchest ally in the Mideast. I mean, it's total lack of conviction, and it's pathetic.
Well, you can't just flip-flop. It's going to stay to a policy, stick to it, whether you fully love it or not. Like, if that's what your ally and you told them you're going to do, then do it. And that, I know that's a super, super touchy topic. Like I said, I've always supported Israel,
right.
But I do not support 17,000 dead kids.
No, I mean,
no matter where they are.
100%. I think at the end of the day, there's got to be.
I think a lot of Jewish people here in the U.S. would say the same.
100%. Nobody wants to
because we care about people.
And nobody wants to see any innocent people be hurt. But we have to let Israel finish the job that they started. And when you look at the brutality of what occurred on October 7th, again, it is Hamas. Palestinians voted Hamas in. They don't negate or denounce Hamas. So at what point do you say, you know what, look, these people are using the innocent civilians of Palestine as human shields, other things.
Yeah, it's disgusting. The whole thing is absolutely
terrible. Yeah.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
I want to roll this to my last two questions.
Yep.
I ask the same two every time.
Sure.
The first one is, do you want to give any love to anybody maybe you didn't mention? You mentioned your brother Mikey, and obviously talked about your sister and your parents. We mentioned your wife and how strong and good she's been to deal with your crazy ass through your hard times, which, again, kudos to her, seriously.
Yeah, 100%. No, I mean, look, you go through, you evolve as you get older, and you know this, and you and I have talked about it. I mean, I'm just grateful to have tremendous people in my life that have always supported me. I've had good mentors, good friends. But ultimately, it's my family. It's always kind of seen me through. My mom, my dad, my grandparents, whole family unit. My brother, has been my best friend since our sister passed, and my wife. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do what I do, and I say this all the time. We always call them like Stryker wives or whatever, industry wives, but. At the end of the day, you can't leave and go out at 6 a.m. and come home at 7 p.m. without knowing that they're holding down the fort, right? So
someone's watching your kid, protecting your kid.
She's doing it on her own. She's just been the best partner I could have ever had, and I've told her that a million times. I mean, it's not me being successful; it's us being successful together and just as a team. So, extremely grateful for her and my kids and the support and just everything that they give me and the motivation they give me.
Second question before we get bored on here. If you can give one bit of advice, someone going in as an entrepreneur, running in the sales channel, or moving out like you did as an entrepreneur and a business owner, what would you tell them? What's that one thing?
Believe in yourself. I think, I don't think I would ever look back at myself going, going back 20 years, 30 years, whatever it is, and look at the life I have today and think I've ever be able to obtain it. So, at the end of the day, you have to have that belief in yourself and not let anybody change that belief. You have to just stay the course and understand what your value is, believe in your capabilities, and just push to the end of the line and understand that if you want it, you're going to get there. And you tap into people that you can pull resources from, and people are willing to help. That's the other biggest thing, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people willing to help.
There's so many people that are so shy to ask for that help and say like, hey, I see Ryan Robbins or I see Bernie Sousa, and it's like, hey, I kind of want to ask them, but I'm a little hesitant, I'm a little shy. Like, we're here to help you guys, right? Like,
how many conversations I have with people that can't afford the pit or one-on-one coaching that I just give away a tremendous amount of my time. And I was talked into starting to charge for advice because I was just distracted by doing that. I call it stroke my own ego, but now that I know how to do this, I want to give it away. I don't know if that's trying to still prove yourself. I don't think it is. I think I just want to help.
Right.
There's a lot of good people out there that want to help.
100%. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like, whether or not it's something that comes through consulting or whatever it is, I think just asking the question, having the courage to go up to somebody you admire and say, look, I'm really trying. What's your advice? We're always going to give that advice because we respect that. We respect you asking a question.
100%.
So, don't be shy. Be yourself. Believe in yourself. You'll get it.
Absolutely. This has been awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Yeah, good time. We'll have some other follow-ups in the future. Maybe some other stuff we'll be doing. On content. Thank you again.
Yeah, you
Great.
got it, man.
Cheers.
Thanks. Oh, cheers.